Good morning, everyone. My name is Van, and today I'm really happy to be here to talk about the materials for developing speaking skills. And first of all, I would like to talk about the definitions of speaking. And like you can see that speaking is a series of experience of hearing, smell, seeing, tasting, and talking. Or in another way, we can say speak here is speech is the vocal life form of human communication. The speech production takes place in the real time and is linear, utterance by utterance. Planning is solely limited, therefore it is the hardest the four skill. So like you can see on the screen here is a process of speaking. So there are some most common way to communicate are speaking, writing, visual images, or body language. And about communication goals, or you know, for speaking, we have some goal to is to change behavior, to get action, to ensure understanding, to persuade, or to get and give information. And here are the types of communication. So there are some types of communication like rare communication, use of sign language, one-to-one communication, oral communication, using gestures, facial expressions, written communication. And I would like to talk about some issues to be that need to be discussed here. And here's the first one about the natural real life communication. Second thing is about the characteristics of spoken language. The next thing is about dealing with problems of fluency with learners. And number four is interaction skills, then differences between oral and written language. And number six is about understanding the nature of speaking, processing, and reciprocity conditions. And the last thing is the types of speaking activities. So let's talk about the nature of real life communication first. So you can see we communicate just because we want to or need to, not just to practice the language. And we focus is on what we are communicating, not on how we are communicating, like ideas and language. So the language that is used is varied in grammar and vocabulary, not made of a single structure for a few structures and not normally repeated over and over again. The second part here is about understanding the challenges of speaking. So, what is involved in producing a conversational utterance? Apart from being grammatical, the utterance must also be appropriate on very many levels at the same time. It must conform to the speaker's aim, to the relationships between interacting, to setting, topic, linguistic context. The speaker must also produce his utterance within those constraints. He doesn't know in advance what will be said to him. In hence, what is his utterance will be respond to yet. So, if the conversation is locked to flag, he must respond to action quickly. The rapid formulation of utterances which are simultaneously right on several levels is essential to the communicative skill, just like Johnson 1981. And here are the differences between speaking and writing. Just because the listener is in front of us, the speaker needs to take into account the listeners and constantly monitor his or her reaction to checking that the listener understands. The speaker needs to construct a comfortable interactive structure for the listeners, just like like make clear when is giving up a turn or in mark the point when he changes topic, or just because the speaker is speaking in the here now, there's no precise record of what was said, so there's a lot of recycling and repetition. So here are the conditions affecting speech. Spontaneous speech takes place under two conditions here, all about processing condition, reciprocity conditions. So like you can see on the screen. I would like to talk about the characteristics of spoken language. So the pressure of time affects the language we use in two ways. First way is that the speaker uses devices to facilitate production, and the second way is that the speaker uses devices to compensate for difficulty. And of course, about facilitation and compensation devices. The first thing I would like to mention is about facilitation. So here's the first one in this part about simplified structures. Use of coordinating conjunction or no conjunction at all, avoidance of complete noun group with many adjectives, repetition of the same sentences acting further activities. Number two is about elliptics. The speaker omit part of sentences. And the next thing is about use of automatic conventional expressions. And the last one is about use of time creating devices. And the second small part here, of course, is about compensation. There are three main points here. Number one, speakers frequently correct what they say, like they may substitute a noun or an adjective for another, or the speaker use then starts. They repeat or rephrase in order to give the listener time to understand and to remind him or her of things that were said. It helps reduce memory load and lighten planning load. Okay, and of course I have found some examples of facilitation and compensation devices. So here is an extract. You can see about interaction skills. There are some management skills like opening, turn taking, interrupting, topic script, adjacencies pairs, and closings. Some utterances like questions, invitations, apologies, compliments required an immediate response, reaction from the listener. The utterances like or the response is called an adjacencies pair, just like some question and answer here. I would like to move to communication strategies. So these are valuable for dealing with communication troubles, both not knowing a word, not understanding the speaker. They enhance fluency and add to the efficiency of communication. And here about the message adjustments, paraphrase, approximation, appeals for help, asking for repetition, or giving an interpretive summary. Yes, speaking activities in craft room here, and they are controlled activities during guided activities and creative communication, like fluency based activities. And also thought about techniques to encourage interaction. So they consist of pair work, group work, plenty of controlled and guided practice before fluency activities, creating a desire and need to communicate, training classroom dynamics. careful planning with certain activities, you may need to allow student time to think about what they are going to say. Yes. And using group work to promote interaction, like group work may increase the amount of learner talking a limited period of time. It's lower the inhibition of learners who are unwilling to speak in front of the full class with the big audiences. Group work means the teachers cannot supervise all learners' speech, but they learn from each other and develop collaboration skills. And facilitate speaking activities. So I have to say that it is an easy language. Base the activity on easy language. The level of language needed for discussion should be lower than that used in intensive language learning activities in the same class. It should be easily recalled and produced by the participants so that they can speak fluently with the minimum of hesitation. And it's good idea to teach or review essential vocabulary before the activity starts. And here, the guider makes a careful choice of topic and asks to stimulate interest, then gives instruction or training in discussion skills. And the last thing is giving students incentives to use the target language and not resort to their mother tongue. Okay, the characteristic of effective speaking activity here, there are some characteristics like learners may talk a lot, the participation is even, the motivation is high, or the language is of an acceptable level. So what is an acceptable level here? It means learners express themselves in utterances that are relevant, easily comprehensible to each other, and accord an acceptable level of language accuracy. About choosing task-based activities. So you can see a task is essentially goal-oriented. It requires the group or pair to achieve an objective that is usually expressed by an observable result. And this result of a task should be attainable only by interaction between participants. So with the definition of the task, you often find instructions such as reach a consensus or find out everyone's opinions. A task is often enhanced if there is some kind of visual focus to base the talking on, just like a picture, a graph, and a map. And here is a picture of differences. So it means the students are in pairs. Each member of the pairs had different pictures, and without showing each other their picture, they have to find out what the differences are between them. And something like you can see on the screen here. I'd like to move to the solving a problem. So you can see the problem here. I'm gonna read completely. Benny, the only child of the rich parents, is in the 7th grade. He's unpopular with both children and the teacher. He's like to attach himself to other members of the class, looking for attention, and doesn't seem to realize they don't want him. He likes to express his opinions in class and tell of it, but his ideas are often silly and laughed at. He has had bad breath. Last Thursday, his classmate got annoyed and told him straight that they didn't want him around. Next lesson, the teacher scolded him sharply in front of the class. Later, he was found crying in the toilet, they saying he wanted to die. He was taken and has not been back to school since a week. And you see, this is particularly suitable for adolescents and is intended for fairly advanced learners. And it usually work well, produce a high level of participation and motivation. As with many simulation tasks, participants tend to become personally involved. And about role play is used to refer to all short-lived activities where learners imagine themselves in a situation outside the classroom, sometimes playing the role of someone other than themselves and using language appropriate to this new context. So here I have an example you can see on the screen. If you really want to focus on, you can take pausing in a second to see it. Of course, I would like to mention dialogues. So learner can be asked to perform dialogue in different ways, like in different moods, in different role relationships. And during the activity, teachers should try to arouse the student interest through relating the topic to the student interest and experience. Then leave in any structure or vocabulary student may need on the board for reference. Make sure that students know the aim of the activity by giving clear instruction and checking understanding. And make sure students have enough time to prepare. Make the activity more a process rather than a product. And teacher also should monitor the activity with no interruption except to provide help and encouragement if necessary. Then teacher must evaluate the activity and the student performance to give feedback. Last thing here is waiting until after the activity has finished before correcting. And here's simulation, so you can see it on the screen by pausing the video, right? Some types of oral interaction activities here, like games, discovering differences, information sharing, blah blah blah, or role play or simulation. I would like to move to the guidelines for a creative speaking activity. So before the lesson, you should decide on your aims, what you want to do and why, and you try to predict any problem the student might have. And then you work out how long the activity will take until to the time available. Then prepare any necessary materials and of course work out your instructions is the last thing. So after the activity, students should give feedback to students, include how well the class communicated, focus more on what they were able to do there than on what they couldn't do, right? And sometimes you can record the activity for discussion afterwards. Focus more on the possible improvement there than the mistakes. Lastly, the guiders must note down repeated mistakes and group correct. So you can see individual mistakes are corrected individually. So here are all about my presentation.